This is episode 103 of the Trauma Coaching for Latter-day Saints podcast, Why Loneliness is Such a Problem. I'm your host, Danita Bremer. I'm a Latter-day Saint mom with a history of trauma. I use my own life experience, intuition, and spiritual gifts, as well as mindset and somatic tools to help you trade ashes for beauty and end generational trauma. Let's talk about what it takes to truly heal and find lasting joy. Okay, so I know that this podcast episode is late getting to you, but the more I do this work and really, notice my nervous system, notice what I'm feeling and thinking, and take care of myself, the less I am willing to push through, push through like low energy or being tired or anything like that. Push through, like push myself in order to get things done. So I was out of town all last week and I came home and I just was so tired. And I knew across the weekend I had intended to record a podcast episode. And here we are Monday afternoon, and I'm recording now, and I'm okay with it because I want to be an example for you on how to do this work. So sometimes that's what it looks like is we're not as consistent as we want to be. Maybe we're not as reliable because you know what? The human body is not always consistent and reliable. So that's why I'm coming to you late. In the last couple of weeks, I've had three learning experiences in which I have learned about why loneliness can be so impactful and so harmful, really. We know, I'm just going to click over in my browser. We know, statistically speaking, that many people in the world suffer from extreme loneliness. I found an article dated February of 2021 that says, according to some research that was done in October of 2020, 950 Americans were interviewed, and over 1/3 of them reported that they feel serious loneliness. That includes 61% of young adults. That's almost 2/3 of our young adults, and 51% of mothers with young children. And I also know another big segment of that population is like retirees, right? So it's a big problem. And I actually looked through all of my podcast episodes, and I'm so surprised that I have not talked about loneliness yet because it is a big problem. And I have myself lots of experience with it. Um, I know it's a problem, like, especially in church culture, we all kind of feel like we're alone next to each other. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit today. The first kind of learning experience that I had was in my trauma certification. We had a class with a guest instructor. Her name is Amy Apigian, I think is how you pronounce her name. I will try to link to her in the show notes. She came to talk to us about attachment theory. So, attachment theory is the theory that how we connect and attach with our caregivers in the womb and in our first couple years of life, how it affects the rest of our life. Okay. And what Dr. Amy said was that from birth to about 1 year old, a baby is all about connection with their caregivers. If they can create a reliable bond with the caregiver, then they create what researchers, what um, experts, in this area call secure attachment. But not all of us create a secure attachment because not all of us had caregivers that were able to recognize and meet our needs. Okay, so basically, what this means is when baby has a need, say dirty diaper or hunger or tiredness or something like that, they make their needs known somehow. Typically, we think of this in terms of crying, right? If the diaper is dirty, then the baby will cry. Now, if it has gotten to the point of the baby is crying, that means that the caregiver is really not very attuned because babies will give signals well before they start to cry. Totally fine. Like we're all busy humans, right? Doesn't mean that you're like a bad mom or anything like that. It just suggests that if like the sooner our needs are met, the more attuned the caregiver is, and the sooner our needs are met, the more secure that attachment will be. Now, there's other kinds of attachment. There's insecure attachment. There's anxious attachment. So there's this whole theory and like different forms, right? I'm not going to go into super detail. Maybe in a future podcast episode I will, but I myself am still learning it. But one thing that I really took away from this class with Dr. Amy is that every action we take is either a bid for connection or a bid for authenticity. And sometimes connection and authenticity kind of run some tension with each other, right? So let me explain what I mean. Connection is the drive we have within ourselves to connect with other people, not kind of surface level connection, but real deep knowing one another, right? Authenticity is the drive we have within ourselves. It's not just like a pretty thing we talk about, it's actually a drive within ourselves to understand ourselves and to be ourselves in the world. So, what happens when you can either get connection or authenticity? Well, for the first year of life, we're always going to lead toward that connection. In the second year of life, if the baby has a secure attachment, they will then move into a developmental phase where they start exploring their authenticity. This is why toddlers say no, right? Because they're figuring out who they are, where their boundaries are, what they like, what they don't like. Now, if we did not get that secure attachment, then we're going to be ambivalent about being truly, authentically ourselves in the world, right? Because the authenticity is going to rub up against the connection. Well, if I'm myself in the world, then what if you don't like me? What if you don't take care of my needs? Right? So many of us, and I fall in this bucket, we suppressed our need to be authentically ourselves in order to continue to try to get the connection we needed in order to survive. This is not like, I just want someone to love me. This is, if I don't connect with you, caregiver, mother, father, whoever, then I will die. And it literally feels like death when we don't get that connection sometimes. So that's kind of the first situation that I'm thinking about. The second was another guest instructor in my trauma certification. His name is Jeff Simone, and he helps people with addiction. And he was kind of telling his own story, but he part of his story was that like normally we think of people who are addicted, they had like abuse. By and large, most people who deal with some kind of addiction have some kind of trauma in their life. And he told a story about Gabor Mate. Gabor Mate is a leading researcher in the field of trauma. He has published several books. They're very thick. I'm reading one of them right now. It's like a college textbook. But if you want to check it out, I will link to that in the show notes as well. So he said that if you watch Gabor Mate's videos on YouTube or whatever, he often will speak to groups of people and he'll ask people to stand up who feel like they had great childhoods. They had no trauma in their childhood, right? And those people will come up, and especially the people who are like adamant about it, like my parents were so amazing. I had a really wonderful childhood. It doesn't explain why I got addicted, right? So Gabor Mate is in the field of trauma and addiction and how they inform one another. And what Gabor Mate says is when he starts asking people questions, he'll ask them about, okay, you didn't have any trauma. No, normally we're talking about big T, capital T trauma, like traumatic events, like a car accident or abuse of some kind, right? But when you were a child, did you feel like you could go to your parents and talk to them? Did you feel safe to talk to your parents about the good or the bad things happening in your life? did you feel lonely as a child? And almost 100% of the time, these people that Gabor Mate talks to in his, as he travels around talking to groups of people, they claim to not have any trauma, but they felt very alone, like they had nobody they could talk to. Okay. So this feeling of loneliness is a really big component of trauma. It's a big component of any emotion that we have a hard time kind of processing through. All right. The third learning experience is that I went to a fireside last night in my friend's stake. Um, Terrell and Fiona Gibbons, they are authors in the LDS world, and they gave a fireside about two things about the nature of God, who God really is, and about refocusing from being saved by Jesus Christ to being healed by Jesus Christ. So the first piece of it was, what is the nature of God? Right. And so some people really struggle with the idea of God from the Old Testament, which is a very angry, vindictive God. Right. But they kind of outlined some translation errors and other things throughout history that showed that God really isn't a vindictive, angry God, judgmental God, but that has been the work of the Protestant Christianity throughout history as a whole. I thought it was so fascinating, right? That like God, the God I know is a loving, kind, supportive, unconditionally loving God, right? And the Jesus Christ I know is a loving, gentle, wants the best for you Savior. And so, as I was thinking about, like, I'm sitting in this fireside and I'm thinking about all these things that I normally think about, I ponder a lot of things. I was thinking about this idea of attachment and loneliness and trauma and this like healing, just the word healing. I'm like, oh, yes. But in order for us to heal, the vast majority, I don't want to say like all of us, because that seems pretty black and white, but I would submit that the vast majority of us cannot heal on our own, right? We need a savior to heal us. We need somebody else with a heartbeat, with skin, to be with us in order to heal. And I think the reason is because of the essential nature, or one of the essential components of trauma is loneliness. So, in order to heal from that, you have to partner with someone, right? And the more people you partner with, the faster your healing will be. Now, it's really important that those people that you partner with, the people that you bring your thoughts and feelings and your true vulnerable emotions to, are safe. They are people who you can feel totally safe with, or as safe as possible. Not all of us have a safe person. I mean, my safe person is my husband. But even sometimes when I think about my relationship with my husband, there's a little bit of, I'm not totally fully safe, right? And we're human, so we're not going to be perfect for anyone. And the other thing I think about is, as I've been thinking about trauma and just I've been on my own journey of healing, I stumbled upon this idea that the most important tool in any practitioner's toolbox, whether it's a therapist or a coach or anybody in kind of the I want to help you world, the most important tool they have is their relationship with you. I mean, this could even be true of teachers. Think about your favorite teacher from grade school, middle school, high school, college, whatever. And why were they your favorite teacher? Sometimes it's about the subject matter, but most of the time It's about how you felt when you were with that teacher. You felt seen, you felt understood, you felt safe to ask questions or to, you know, think through problems without being reprimanded, right? Again, it comes back to this idea of loneliness or like, what support do we have, right? I feel like my number one tool in my coaching is my relationship with my clients. If you don't feel safe with me, then there's no amount of mindset or somatic work. Like the somatic work isn't even going to be very effective because it's such an internal experience. So you have to be able to trust me on a vulnerable level, right? So that's the very first thing I establish is like, I love you. There's nothing you can say or do that will make me want to like fire you as a client, right? And there are coaches that do that. But that is like, that has to be the underlying foundation for healing. So, if this is true, if loneliness compounds our suffering, loneliness compounds our whatever negative emotion, uncomfortable emotion you feel, what is the antidote? The antidote is to reach out for support, reach out for other humans. And if you don't have other humans, for maybe a pet of some kind, to not do this work on your own. It is okay, like last week's episode, it is okay to be where you are. And there's some acceptance of that we need to do. But there's also some acceptance of, I can't do this on my own. I need help. And I did speak to that in last week's episode. If you're trying to do it on your own, and if you're feeling lonely, that is going to be working against you. Okay. Now, I recognize that this could kind of sound like a pitch, like a, if you're lonely and you need help, come coach with me. That is not at all. Like, we all have lots of people in our lives, parents, if they're safe, siblings, spouses, children, if they're safe, right? This is all if these people are safe. We have members of our ward, we have neighbors, we in today's society, it's super rare that any of us are completely alone all the time. So I want you to really think about, who is it that you can call or that you can talk to, that you can just be as much yourself as possible, and they'll just listen, right? Without judgment, without trying to fix it, those kinds of things. Because it's going to be really important. It's going to be really important that you have at least one person, if ideally more than one person, that you can open up and feel safe with. Okay, so your journal questions for this week. First one, very simple. Am I lonely? Why or why not? I might even encourage you to put this on like a scale of 1 to 10. On a scale of 1 to 10, how lonely do I feel? And why? Some of that is just to kind of get your juices flowing. Some of you may not feel lonely, and maybe this will be for you to think about, how can I help someone in my life that feels lonely, right? Question number 2, did I feel safe sharing my highs and my lows with anyone growing up? If not, why not? Was there a safe person that you could talk to about all the amazing things that was happening in your life and all the terrible things that was happening in your life? Or did you just keep it all to yourself? And then the third question is, who can I share with now? Now, I want to encourage you to really sit with that question for a while, to get creative with the resources, the people resources that you have. But if you legitimately cannot think of anyone, or you want more people in that circle, I want to encourage you to come to my drop-in coaching. This is drop in. You don't have to RSVP or anything like that, but you do need to get on my email list to get the Zoom info and to know when the days and times are, because I'm going to switch it every month. So right now, for the rest of November, and this actually, I think I'm going to extend this to the second week of December as well. So for November 21st, 28th, December 5th, and December 12th, those are all Mondays. Drop-in coaching will be Mondays at 12:30 Mountain Time. Like I said, you don't have to RSVP. You don't have to tell me I'm coming. You don't even have to get coached. If you just want to like, what is this? What would it be like? You just want to watch, that's totally fine too. And then I always have a free one-on-one coaching call on my website. Go there. The first thing that comes up, these little buttons will slide across. And one of them is for a free coaching call. And you're always welcome to schedule that as well. If you would like if this episode really kind of resonated with you, if you're feeling lonely, if you're feeling like you need more support, those are two ways that you can work with me that you won't even have to pay me a dime. Drop-in coaching, I am going to put some payment information in there if you want. It's like if you want to pay $5, $10, $15, if it's been helpful, you can, but you totally don't have to. And then the one-on-one, the free call is just totally free, and I won't even let you pay for that. So there's a couple ways. And then the other thing is I would love to connect with you on Voxer. It's an orange walkie-talkie app. It's totally free. You don't need anything but download the app and then come find me. And my handle is at Danita Bremer. And you can text or you can voice memo. And I would just love to hear your story and what you're struggling with. And I would just love to help you in whatever way I can. And that's totally free too. You don't have to pay for that. I genuinely think that telling our stories is really important. And I would love to hear yours. That's enough for now. And so are you. The impact I am making in the world with the tools I share grows by word of mouth. Would you please share this episode with someone this week? Also, like I said, I would love to hear your story. Go to my website, danitabremer.com, schedule a free call to share it with me, or connect with me on Voxer at Danita Bremer. Until next time, go be yourself and follow the spirit.